Accused, the 6 men in the dock for the attempted suicide bombings on trains and buses in London. A court heard how they planned to cause carnage with homemade explosives exactly 2 weeks after the July the 7th terror attacks. Tonight, on trial, the men claimed to be behind the failed bomb plot. The court was told how the gang packed their bombs with shrapnel to cause as many injuries as possible. It is also alleged 3 of the defendants had links to the radical Muslim cleric Abu Hamza. Also tonight, under investigation, police and health officials raid the offices of one of Britain's top fertility doctors.
What we are providing is a good service for the patient. We're not harming anybody. We're not a backstreet clinic that opened all of a sudden, sort of without anybody knowing anything. We've been working in this country for 12 years.
Also tonight, the big melt will be making television news history here in Antarctica as we kick off a week of special coverage from the most remote place on the planet. Join me on a journey to discover the truth about global warming.
And caught on camera, jail for the high-tech poker cheats who con casinos out of hundreds of thousands of pounds.
And the top story in the West tonight. Worried parents hold a crisis meeting at the Swindon school where a 15-year-old pupil was attacked with a hammer.
Good evening. They mixed hair bleach and chapati flour, a court heard today, to carry out murderous suicide bombings on London's streets and in the tube tunnels beneath them. The extremist Muslim plot only failed, said the prosecution, because the bomb maker had mixed the ingredients incorrectly. Today, 6 men went on trial for the attempted bombings 2 weeks after July the 7th. The prosecution said they weren't copycats. They had been plotting for months. 3 had attended sermons given by the radical Islamic cleric Abu Hamza. Well, our UK editor Angus Walker was in Woolwich Crown Court today and is there for us tonight. Angus.
Extraordinary evidence about 5 failed bomb attacks on London's tube and bus network. Graphic details on how to make a bomb, the exact quantities of household chemicals needed, and how a council flat was turned into a bomb factory. And for the first time, how the police traced and tracked the alleged bombers. All on day 1 of 21/7, the trial.
Of these 6 men, 5 are the first defendants to be accused in a British court of being would-be suicide bombers. All are accused of being part of an extremist Muslim plot to bomb London's transport network. July 2005, the streets of the capital, the city suffering from a sense of fear and imminent danger. The judge in this trial has told the jury to appreciate that this case comes after the incidents in London at that time. All the shock, the confusion and media reporting, especially after the deaths on the 7th of July. It was just 2 weeks and a few hours after the 7th of July bombings when the prosecution insists 3 men entered Stockwell tube station, allegedly carrying homemade bombs intent on death and destruction. They came through the barriers and then split up. The men allegedly tried to detonate rucksack bombs on 3 tube trains and a bus, just a fortnight after the suicide blasts which killed 52 people. A 5th man is said to have dumped his bomb in a park, while a 6th man is said to have helped plan the attacks. The defendants, Mukhtar Saeed Ibrahim, Manfur Saidu, Hussein Osman, Yassin Omar, Ramzi Mohammed and Adel Yahya are all accused of conspiracy to murder and conspiracy to cause explosions, charges they all deny. The court was told that Yassin Omar boarded a train at Stockwell and headed north. It was at about 12:40 on the Victoria line, somewhere between Oxford Circus and Warren Street, that the prosecution allege he tried to detonate his bomb. But luckily for those on board, only the detonator went off. The main charge had failed. The jury heard that number 58 Curtis House, a flat on the 9th floor of this block in North London, was the bomb factory, but that all the bombs had been mixed incorrectly. The plotters are accused of buying large quantities of hydrogen peroxide, or hair bleach, mainly from this hairdressing supply shop in North London. But according to experts, despite boiling the bleach and mixing it with chapati flour, they didn't get it to the required strength, and so only the detonators went off. One of the men, when arrested, allegedly told police in Rome that this was planned. It was an elaborate hoax. The bombs weren't meant to go off. Today, the prosecution showed videos made by explosives experts of replica bombs being detonated, trying to prove that the devices would have gone off had they been mixed correctly. Nigel Sweeney QC, the prosecutor, told the jury, "We say that the failure of these bombs to explode owed nothing to the intentions of the defendants. Rather, it was simply the good fortune of the travelling public this day that they were spared." All the men deny the charges and the case continues.
So, Angus, was it just luck that these bombs didn't explode and we didn't have another July the 7th on the London Underground?
That's exactly what the prosecution say that these men had spent months planning the attacks, months researching the exact quantities of household chemicals required. They'd spent months preparing and gathering all the ingredients together. They spent a lot of time actually cooking the ingredients, if you like, trying to get them to the required strength. The prosecution say these men knew what they were trying to do. We were shown a replica of one of the bombs in court today, and those videos were very dramatic. We should get them soon to show people at home as soon as possible. And so the prosecution say these men did know what they were doing. This was not some hastily arranged copycat operation. They knew what they were doing, and only because of luck were hundreds, perhaps, of people not killed.
Angus, thank you. There were raids this evening on 2 clinics run by the millionaire fertility doctor Mohammed Taranisi. The Fertility Authority said they were part of a long-standing investigation into his licence to practice. But tonight, Mr Taranisi told ITV News there was a dispute about paperwork, but not about quality of care. He insisted, "We just want to help women who want babies." Our medical correspondent Sue Saville spoke to him.
Inspectors carried out box after box of evidence from the clinics of Mohammed Taranisi, one of Britain's leading fertility experts. The teams were backed up by police to ensure full access to what they wanted.
We've conducted an inspection today, an unannounced inspection of this premises, and we did that fully. We got full cooperation.
But the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority, the HFEA, say they've had unique difficulties with Mr Taranisi's clinics.
We've had obstruction, we've had objection, and we've had challenge at every step of the way.
The information taken in box loads from this clinic is understood to relate to patient notes, to records of authorisation and protocols for the various fertility treatments used here. Information the HFEA says it has a right to and had been unable to get.
A claim refuted by Mohammed Taranisi.
Everything that has been required from us has been delivered to them, I would say more than once. It's not just once, I think it's been delivered more than once, and we've got the paperwork to prove that.
But the evidence gathered tonight may bring a serious charge. It's alleged that one of Mr Taranisi's clinics was operating without a licence.
For anyone to provide licensable treatment in a centre that does not have a licence, that is a very, very serious issue indeed. It is potentially a criminal act.
The information gathered in the raids on the clinics will be brought here to the HFEA to be analysed before the licensing committee decides its next step. Its ultimate sanction could be to shut down a clinic.
You need to remember that what we are providing is a good service for the patient. We're not harming anybody. We're not a backstreet clinic that's opened all of a sudden, sort of without anybody knowing anything. We've been working in this country for 12 years.
And outside the clinic, one patient came to show her support.
I feel very strongly about this. I was a patient of Mr Taranisi's and I was very happy with the treatment I received here.
But tonight, Mr Taranisi's top-of-the-league figures that attract new patients are being reviewed as part of the investigation. Sue Saville, ITV News.
There is more still to come on the ITV News tonight, including Destination Antarctica, our groundbreaking investigation into the effects of climate change, and how a gang of poker cheats used hidden cameras to beat the odds. But first, he says he doesn't worry about popularity or public opinion, but President Bush has been using the M word, mistake, when talking about America's role in Iraq. He admitted to American television that things could have been done better. Neil Connery listened to what he had to say.
He is a president under pressure, trying to convince America to back his plans to send more than 21,000 extra troops to Iraq. So interviewed by one US TV network, President Bush has given his frankest assessment yet of the mistakes his administration has made there, stretching back to the Abu Ghraib prisoner scandal.
Abu Ghraib was a mistake. Using bad language like, bring them on was a mistake. I think history is going to look back and see a lot of ways we could have done things better. No question about it.
The troop levels, sir,
could have been a mistake.
Could have been a mistake.
Yeah.
This is a revealing insight into how President Bush sees the foreign policy issue which will define his legacy.
I'm not going to try to be popular and change principles to do so.
You're not very popular in the country right now, to be frank. I wonder,
I'm afraid you're right.
Does that get to you?
Not really.
You know that there's a perception in some quarters of the country that you're stubborn.
I think I'm a flexible, open-minded person. I really do. Take this policy. I spend a lot of time listening to a lot of people. Because, Scott, I fully understand the decisions I make could affect the life of some kid who wears the uniform.
And on the question of Saddam's execution, did the president watch the dictator's final moments?
Somebody showed me parts of it, yeah. I didn't want to watch the whole thing.
You didn't want to see him go through the trapdoor?
Yeah. Yes, I didn't.
Last week, the president addressed the nation in a primetime broadcast about his plans to bolster U.S. forces in Iraq.
Fellow citizens, the year ahead will demand more patience, sacrifice, and resolve.
How different it all sounds now from the confident message before.
We are winning the war in Iraq.
The president's talk of mistakes will change little. For many war-weary Americans, he's already run out of answers. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Some other stories in the headlines tonight, and the inquest into the death of Princess Diana won't, after all, involve a jury. The case will only be heard by Baroness Butler-Sloss, the former judge. Mohammed Fayed, whose son Dodi was also killed in the Paris crash nearly 10 years ago, called the decision shocking but predictable. This is how British Airways cabin crew celebrated voting to go on strike. Thousands of flight attendants will stage a series of three-day strikes. 96% voted in favour of industrial action over sick leave, pay and staffing levels. Another hanging in Baghdad, that of Barzan Ibrahim, Saddam Hussein's half-brother, has sparked controversy. It emerged that he was decapitated. Although the Iraqi government has claimed that the beheading was an accident, one of Saddam's top officials was also hanged at the same time. And 2 people have died and 3 are still trapped after a high-speed ferry carrying about 150 commuters collided with a merchant ship off the coast of Sicily. Rescue boats at the port of Messina have taken the injured to nearby hospitals. Nowhere on Earth are the effects of climate change more noticeable than in Antarctica, something that might be better known if its remoteness didn't also make it the hardest place on Earth to report from. Tonight, though, ITV News begins a week of broadcasts from Antarctica, something that has never been done before by anyone. Mark Austin and our science editor Lawrence McGuinty have travelled there for a series of reports on the big melt. This is the first of them.
Yes, good evening and welcome to Antarctica, the most remote place on this planet, a vast, pristine continent of ice. But the ice is melting here on the Antarctic Peninsula faster than anywhere else on Earth, and that is why we are here. We're here to find out the truth about global warming, rapidly becoming the most urgent issue of our times. Now, deep inside the glacier behind me and in the meltwaters all around are contained the answers to some of the questions that affect us all. We are also going to be making a little bit of TV news history this week. We're the first organisation to broadcast live news programmes from Antarctica. First for us this evening, Lawrence McGuinty reports on the big melt.
It's the coldest and most windswept place on Earth. Technically, it's the biggest desert in the world. Few animals or plants survive here. And with a land area nearly 60 times bigger than Britain, it holds 90% of the world's ice. Now the big fear is that a big melt will be catastrophic for sea levels and perhaps for mankind too. For just a few weeks every summer, this becomes Antarctica's equivalent of the M1. 9 years ago in Antarctica, I was told there were few signs of that threat materialising. Now, the scientists are much more worried. In the Antarctic Peninsula, glaciers are on the retreat. Global warming is happening here faster than anywhere else on Earth. In one area alone, the ice is already on the move. If it all melted, sea levels would rise by a metre. Though so far, warming has barely touched the vastness of the Antarctic plateau. But it hasn't always been that way. Scientists have drilled 3 kilometres down into the ice sheet, bringing up ice cores thousands of years old. By analysing the cores, they know warming has happened in the past. And they know levels of carbon dioxide, the main warming gas, are increasing now faster than ever before. They fear we could be approaching a point of no return, a tipping point that would irreversibly change our climate and our world. For many years, scientists thought that the main ice sheets in Antarctica were stable. Now, they no longer think that. Instead, they see Antarctica as a time bomb, and a bomb whose clock is ticking. Lawrence McGinty, ITV News, Antarctica.
So global warming already has its grip on our planet, and there are those scientists who believe the tipping point is now rapidly approaching. All this week we will not only be reporting from here in Antarctica, but from right across the world. We'll be naming and shaming the world's worst CO2 polluters, and we'll be revealing those countries doing most to curb it. We'll also be reporting from the Paradise Islands, where global warming is already wrecking lives. Right, well, what a place this is. Let me very quickly give you a more precise idea of exactly where we are. We're about halfway down the Antarctic Peninsula on Adelaide Island, surrounded by glaciers and by the icebergs that have broken away from them. It really is a spectacular place. Let me give you an idea of where we're living. It's here at the British Antarctic Survey Base at Rothera. It's where the scientists live. It's from where the scientists go to do their work. How did our equipment get here, our satellite dish and our cameras? Well, it all came courtesy of the Royal Navy on this ship, HMS Endurance, which brought the gear from the Falklands, from Stanley, across the Southern Ocean here to Rothera. And that is how we're able to broadcast to you this week from Antarctica. Thanks then to the Royal Navy, and this is how we got here.
If you want to get to the Antarctic, it's pretty simple really. Just head south and keep on going and going and going.
And power cinch.
After 22 hours from London to southernmost Chile, we lift off for a 5-hour hop across the Southern Ocean, the last leg of the journey to the bottom of the world.
Well, quite a lot of cargo on this flight down to the Antarctic, all the protective clothing, of course, without which, even in summer, you simply would not survive. Lots of fresh food on this flight, carrots, lettuces, potatoes, something of a luxury for the people down there. Of course, this lifeline, this flight, only exists for 4 months of the year. For 8 months of the year, the scientists down in the Antarctic are simply cut off from the outside world.
But there's no going back now.
So quickly does the weather change down here that this is a flight with a point of no return. The pilot checks the conditions ahead and must then make the decision to carry on or turn back.
We will be PNR at time 1650.
Even though the weather's not great, we're going in, and moments later the cloud gives way to a seascape like no other. The first glimpse of Antarctica is a spectacular one, an awe-inspiring construct of nature that yields to no man. Welcome to a very different world.
The first thing you do when you reach the Antarctic is realise how dangerous it is. There are crevasses all over the place. This is one of them. And we're being trained basically how to survive in them. This is probably not the way.
It's the first lesson of life in the Antarctic, and for the people working here, it's a hard one.
Particularly for the scientists, a lot of them are going into fairly remote and inhospitable environments. So basically we need to ensure that they can cope with whatever the environment throws at them.
Well, there we are, we've arrived, and to some extent at least we've been trained, but two thoughts immediately occur to me. One is just how stunningly beautiful this place is, and the second one is a more unsettling thought that maybe what man is doing thousands of miles from here could be leading to the melting of the ice, and may then perhaps lead to a rise in sea levels, which may come back to haunt us. It really is an alarming thought. Now, since we're lucky enough to be in this extraordinary place, Lawrence McGinty and I want to share our experiences in daily blogs. You can find them along with links and other information about Antarctica and a quiz to see how much you know about climate change. You can find them all at www.itv.com/news, and you can email Lawrence with any questions you have about climate change and Antarctica. Send them to asklawrence@itv.com. Coming up tomorrow, the remarkable moment when I get a little too close for comfort to the effects of climate change.
I think what strikes you when you've been here a few days is that the scientists are convinced that something odd is happening. I mean, to the untrained eye, you can see some of these icebergs are melting. You can feel, there we are, I mean, there we are, that gives you an idea of what it's like. That iceberg there has just deposited a huge amount of ice in the water, and that was very close to where we were.
And Martin Geisler's special assignment to the remote Carteret Islands, where they're being forced to abandon paradise. And I'm hoping to have a very special guest live on the programme. But for now, from me and from the entire team here in Antarctica, it's back to the studio in London.
And as Mark says, there'll be more from him and the team on the big melt from the Antarctic tomorrow. Let's take a look at the markets today, and the FTSE 100 share index closed 24 points higher at 6,263. In New York, the Dow Jones finished at 12,556. That's up 41 points on the day. And tonight the pound is trading at $1.96, up by almost half a cent. Still to come tonight, how card cheats conned a casino with tiny cameras hidden up their sleeves. More on that and the main stories in tomorrow's papers after all the news where you are.
Good evening from the West tonight. Just a few hours ago, a crisis meeting was held at the school where a 15-year-old pupil was attacked with a hammer. Henry Webster's skull was broken in 3 places. His parents say that he believes he only survived thanks to the efforts of PE teachers who gave him first aid. Tonight, worried parents met with the head teacher and governors of Ridgeway School in Swindon to voice their concerns over their children's safety.
Well, I've got a daughter who's just started Ridgeway. 2 have left. And obviously for the safety of my child, I wanted to know what was happening. But within the talk from the headmaster and the governor, he answered all my questions basically, and I feel quite happy with letting my daughter come to the school.
I want to know something's going to be put in place to keep my children safe. This isn't the first incident that happened. There have been other incidents. There was no feedback from last time, and I've sat and listened to a load of waffle. I want to know my kids are going to be safe. I hear there's going to be some kind of fence put up, but there's no time scale, no concrete action plan at all. No one's even taken minutes to feed back to parents who aren't here.
It's been revealed that inmates at prisons across the West have been awarded almost £60,000 in compensation over the last 2 years. Home Office figures show payouts were made after prisoners complained about unfair treatment they'd received. A retired Somerset farmer is making a plea to save his Kenyan wife from deportation. Gordon and Rose Munden have been married for 5 years, but Rose could now be forced to return to Africa. She says if that happens, then she'll be killed. Her husband claims his life will be torn apart if she's forced to leave. Myra Lee reports.
This is my wife, Rose. Please don't take her away from me. She means everything to me. She really does.
Yes, my darling, you can hear.
Gordon and Rose Mondon are devoted to one another. They were introduced through a Christian dating agency, and the first time they met, Gordon proposed. Now Mrs. Mondon may be forced back to her native Kenya, where she feels her life may be at risk.
I think I'll be killed. I think so. I think that I'll be killed. If they know this is the lady who fled all these years since 1999.
Mrs. Mondon was a member of a political opposition party in Kenya. She says she fled after being attacked by 5 police officers who also burnt down her vegetable shop. She applied for asylum in the UK but was turned down. In 2002 she met and married Gordon, but 2 years later they received a letter from the Home Office telling her to report to immigration officers and the police. 2 appeals have since failed, and they've now been told to apply for leave to remain in the UK, but they have no further right of appeal, and Mrs. Mondon fears she will be asked to leave at any time. The Home Office said they couldn't comment on individual cases, but were committed to provide protection for those in genuine need in accordance with international legal agreements. But the couple say they can't live without each other.
I would like to beg the government just to give me green light to stay with my husband, because it's a long way since we married 5 years ago. We have been building our home together. I can't live alone, and I don't think whether I can stay without Gordon.
Myra Lee in Somerset for The West Tonight.
A Conservative MP facing deselection after admitting an affair with a married woman says claims that his estranged wife is seeking work as a cleaner are wildly inaccurate. James Gray, MP for North Wiltshire, has written to the Press Complaints Commission about an article in the Mail on Sunday. He says he continues to support her financially. Now, congestion on our roads has always been a big problem, particularly in rush hour, but in one part of the region they may have found a solution. In South Gloucestershire, they've been trying out a new scheme which means cars with 2 or more passengers can use bus lanes. It's been so successful that councils around the country are being encouraged to do the same. Well, let's take a look at the region's weather now with Bob Crampton.
Change your outlook with Flybe, sponsors of ITV West Weather.
Well, still quiet on the Western Front. It's due to change later in the week with storm-force winds. Tomorrow stays tame, though, with brighter conditions later on. Tonight, a band of rain has been moving towards us. It's going to affect areas in the north and west, as you can see first. Lows of 7 or 8 degrees. Starting off fairly grotty tomorrow with outbreaks of rain heavier towards these Welsh borders down there. But it does begin to improve. Drier and brighter by the afternoon, particularly down here in South Somerset and indeed in Dorset. Very mild again, the top temperature 12 Celsius. Now it's starting to get more unsettled on Wednesday. Scattered showers on the cards. Overnight the wind reaches a gale force. By Thursday it's really going to be going hammer and tong. Heavy rain and winds gusting to 70 miles an hour. Eases at the end of the week, but still pretty overcast and rainy. After that it might even get colder. Good night.
Flybe, sponsors of ITV West Weather.
Bob, thanks very much. And that's the way it looks tonight. It's time now for a reminder of the top national and international stories. And we rejoin James Mates in London. From all of us here, good night.
Hello again, our main headlines tonight. 6 men have gone on trial accused of trying to carry out suicide bombings on July the 21st, 2005. 2 clinics run by one of the country's top fertility doctors have been raided. Tonight, Mohammed Taranisi told ITV News, "We just want to help women who want babies." And the former judge overseeing the inquest into the death of Princess Diana has ruled it will not be heard by a jury. As a casino poker scam, the plan was simple. Sneak a look at the cards as they were dealt. It was the equipment that was sophisticated. A miniature camera hidden up the sleeve of one of the gang. Like so many gamblers, they didn't know when to stop. A casino called in the police because they kept winning. Keir Simmons reports.
They mingled with high rollers and millionaires, staking thousands of pounds and winning. Except they were cheating, and in September, Bit Wong, Yao Lam and Fan Tang were caught with something up their sleeve. In less than an hour, the group won £3,500 playing three-card poker at this casino in London's Kensington. Such winnings would not have seemed unusual amongst the wealthy gamblers here, except that the staff spotted their elaborate scam. These CCTV pictures show them in the casino on the night they were caught. It worked like this. Lam hid a camera up his sleeve. That camera filmed the dealer's cards. Those pictures were beamed back to Tang, hiding in a vehicle outside, and he communicated back to the other two via hidden earpieces.
They were quite simply using a camera and a monitor to look underneath the dealer's cards before they were placed face down. So obviously they had a huge advantage. In this type of poker, just knowing one card that the dealer's got is a massive advantage.
The police even seized footage shot by the gang whilst they were operating their scam. For a second, it's possible to see the cards. In the end, they were caught because they were winning so often, forgetting that a successful gambler knows when to cash in the chips and walk away. Keir Simmons, ITV News.
Well, now for a look at tomorrow's front pages. The Mail leads on the July the 21st bomb plot trial. It says one of the alleged bombers escaped capture for days after fleeing London disguised as a woman in a burqa. The Independent says that Europe's extremist parties have secured enough support to make a formal political group. It says their influence underlines the growing challenge posed by the far right. The Telegraph says banks are scrapping fixed-rate deals. Lenders say it's because customers rush to buy them and have used up all the available funding. And the Express predicts half-term holiday chaos after BA cabin crews voted to strike. It says the walkouts could ground hundreds of flights as families plan to jet off. Well, that is all from us for tonight, from me and from the rest of the team here. Good night.
Yo, boy, fetch.
ITV National Weather. Sponsored by Powergen.
Hello again, good evening. Continuing wet and windy towards the northwest of the UK as we move through the night, but it is going to travel slightly south and southeastwards, giving drier and colder conditions for you there towards the north. Temperatures dropping well below freezing, but towards the south continuing fairly wet, fairly mild as well. Those temperatures staying well above the seasonal average. So looking ahead to tomorrow, once again, splitting conditions. This time, the cloudy, wet weather towards the south, colder, brighter, drier towards the north. And that's good news after all the rain you've had recently. But it's going to be a cold day for you, I think. Temperatures there rising up to just around 4 or 5 Celsius for many, but staying well above the seasonal average further south. Temperatures rising into double figures. That's it from me. Good night. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Park, hear it? Positive energy from Powergen.